So we are getting into AP review mode. Over the next few weeks after school, we'll kind of do some tutoring sessions. It's not going to be heavy. It's not going to really be content based. We're going to do a lot of that in class. This is all going to be strategies, things that you can use to maybe kind of outsmart the College Board because guys, they're trying to trick you. They are. I'm not going to say evil, but
paid to trick us.
they are paid to trick you, yes. And the way that they design questions sometimes can be very purposely misleading. So you got to kind of learn how to see through all the shenanigans that they're putting out there because a lot of these questions really aren't as hard as you think they are. So kind of what we'll do if you look at the format of the AP exam, you got the multiple choice. That's 55 questions. You'll have 55 minutes. 1 minute per question. That is the biggest chunk of the exam. Again, the multiple choice, some people do really well, some people struggle, but you want to get out of the multiple choice with about 60% correct, all right? More if you can. If you do less, it's not the end of the world, but the deal is with the 60%, if you can emerge from the multiple choice with 60% of it correct, then you just got to write decent. You don't have to be the world's greatest writer. You need to pick up some points along the way, but you don't have to just, knock everything out of the park. You get way below 60% on the multiple choice, your writing has to be spot on. So, we want to focus on multiple choice first, then we'll kind of follow the format. We'll spend one of these sessions on SAQ, two of them on the free response questions. So let's look at multiple choice stuff. Let me see where we are. All right. If you're not already there, go ahead and go to Canvas. You're going to go down to today's date. You want to be right here, AP exam skill building tutorial number 1. So before we start on, any of the strategies really, we're going to do a little practice quiz. All right. I've given you 9 questions. I want you to complete it in 9 minutes. All of these are stimulus based. This is what the College Board actually put out in the instructional guide as kind of a sample, just to kind of show you the level of difficulty you're going to encounter in a lot of these questions, kind of how they're going to be formatted, how they're going to try to trick you. Now, before you start, let me give you a few little tips, a little word to the wise. First, I had to write these down. And you're going to kind of choose what works best for you. I mean, some of you guys are knocking it out of the park every time. So if you've got a different system, use that, okay? Play to your strengths. But a couple things over the years that I found, first of all, almost all of your documents are stimulus-based. I mean, they're all stimulus-based, all your questions, excuse me. Most of them are going to be documents. Sometimes it'll be a picture, sometimes a map, a chart, a graph, whatever. But like most of the ones that you're going to do today, yeah, you've got a little reading passage. For me, whether it's a reading passage, if it's a picture, whatever, always look at the source first. Who's this coming from? What civilization were they a part of? What time period were they alive in? Because a lot of times just looking at that, it'll get you in the right frame of mind. Because if you see a quote from, I don't know, the Pope or a Mongol or some sort of samurai or something like that, you should be thinking right off the bat, what do I know about this group of people? What do I know about this time period? Because just thinking about it like that, a lot of times once you read through the material, you'll kind of see what direction they're going for. Because again, the stuff that we cover in class, it's not everything about any of these different groups. It's the stuff that the College Board wants you to know. So always start off scanning over the source, seeing who's saying whatever is being said, look at the time period, think about what you already know. Second, you only got a minute per question. You do not have time to agonize over anything. All right, that's just for all the tests we do in here for the AP test. You have to read it one time thoroughly, go with your gut, and move on. You do not have time to obsess. Now, if you finish early and want to go back and look over some stuff, go ahead. But really, you've got time to read it one time really thoroughly. Hopefully read the answer choices, toss a couple of them out, and then go with your gut. Next thing. And this is just multiple choice tests, in general. You can almost always eliminate at least one answer choice. All right. They put ones in here that are going to look good. They all look good when you first look at them. But there's always at least one that, because of maybe what they're saying is the wrong time period, or it's the wrong civilization, or just it obviously doesn't make sense. or it's irrelevant. You know, you can usually get rid of those. A lot of times you can get rid of two. And the biggest thing, and this is something we haven't spent a lot of time on, a lot of times they'll put answer choices on there that when you look at the source, you'll say, well, that's a good answer for like 500 years later. Okay, think of time. Think of the time periods we've discussed. I mean, in this class, it's all divided up 1200 to 1450, 1450 to 1750, 1750 to 1900, 1900 to present. Okay, think about the time period you're dealing with. Is that answer true of the period that the question's asking about? And finally, and this is just, you know, basic common sense, answer all the questions. All right. A lot of people, you know, still, even to this part, you know, where we're getting in the year where we've done a lot of tests, I didn't finish. You know, I only have 5 minutes left, so I stopped at 20 or something. No. Guess. All right. Guess. We call it, and we've talked about it in class. See your way out. Okay. And that is actually real. Doesn't have to be C. But let's say on the AP exam, because it's 55 questions and you're going to be all amped up and you may get stuck at a certain point. The timekeeper may say, okay, you got 5 minutes and you're on question 30. Well, you're not really going to finish 25 more questions. The best strategy is pick one letter, bubble it all that letter. The reason is, you know, if you do abacadabra, you may not get A. But if you choose C or D or whatever, and you do all of them that same answer, I mean, statistically, you're going to get at least a few of them right. And that's the thing. This test, because it is multiple parts, you just try to accumulate as many points as you go. And the good thing is, if you completely screw up one part, you've got other parts and other skills that you can maybe do a little bit better on. Then hopefully at the end, it averages out to a 3 or higher. So I'm going to challenge you in the next 9 minutes to knock this out. Again, use those basic strategies, you know, read it one time thoroughly, look at the source first, and then just move through it. If you have time at the end, look back over your stuff, but answer these questions. Then we're going to look at the questions one by one and kind of show you some of the tricks that the College Board likes to pull a lot. Everybody understand what you need to do? All right, go ahead and get started now. We'll talk about this in 10 minutes. That way, if you need to take a drink of water or something before you get started, you'll be good. Guys probably got what, about 5 more minutes, something like that. All right, don't let me distract you. Keep doing what you're doing. So you guys probably got about 3 or 4 minutes left, probably. 2-ish, maybe. Well, then we'll talk about it here in about 3-ish minutes. Okay, I'll give you another minute or two. If you got to submit early, it's okay. You can practice seeing your way out if need be. Doesn't really matter how well you do. It's all about the experience. Anybody still working? Fantastic. So, what were your thoughts? Like, how much did you enjoy that?
That was like a question mark.
It was a question mark, okay? What was the worst part about it? Because it wasn't designed to be fun.
I felt like I didn't have enough time.
Yeah, no,
Didn't have enough time.
No, I feel like I had enough time. All of the questions kind of sounded the same. All of the
Okay.
answers all sounded the same.
And you're right. Okay, there's a few things you got to realize. First of all, AP World History very much caters to this AP exam. It's been on my Canvas page forever, but when we start reviewing, one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to go through the curriculum guide. And it says just kind of ridiculous things, but it always uses the same wording. Like on your project, make sure they know about challenges to assumptions of race and gender and stuff like that. The way that they talk in the curriculum guide is not how people actually talk. The thing is, they based all the questions on what's in the curriculum guide. So once you start to see that sort of language, yeah, it is very formulaic. Yeah, a lot of the answers are going to look alike. Second of all, it always starts off with something terrible like this. Okay, let's look at this. Can you guys still see the quiz?
You
You
can
can't.
take it again.
Well, you know what? Go ahead and open it. Why not? It doesn't matter. Now let's look at this together.
We know what we got on it.
I can tell you.
Could you open it so that we can see the quiz?
Does anybody mind having their results shown to the whole world?
I mind.
I'll tell you what. Give me 30 seconds. Let me make sure the kids online can't see it. All right, let's see what's going on. Oh, I'm in the wrong. Oh, okay. I'll tell you what. I'm going to tell you what you got on it here in a minute. We'll do that at the end. That's just going to slow things down. So let's go ahead and just look at this. And actually, it works better if you don't know what you got for right now, because I'm kind of curious to see what you guys think the right answers are. So let's do a little preview here. Let's look at this quiz. Now, first and foremost, this is intimidating. It's a big, long, primary source document you got to read. You look at the source first. You're like, man, maybe I'll know something about this. And it's from the King of Hungary. And you're like, man, we've never even mentioned Hungary in this class. And right then, you get psyched out. They know that, okay? The thing is, more often than not, the people that are actually writing these things you've never heard of. That's okay. They do that purposely to throw you off. What they're writing about, though, it does address something you likely are familiar with. So just knock King Bela out, okay? He's writing to the Pope, okay? So what do I know about the Pope? He's Catholic, very powerful person in Europe at the time. What time period are we talking? 1250. So for me, you've now identified the geographic area. You got the time period. You kind of know a little bit about, who this Pope guy is. So I would start thinking, what do I remember about Europe during this time period, the 1250s? Anything come to mind? It's okay. I know one of the things that we talked about the most is like feudalism. We talked about that a decent amount. We did talk about the power of the Roman Catholic Church, so that makes sense. Those were the main things, okay? And really, all of us AP teachers are catering to the test, so we're talking about a lot of the same things. Next, as you're reading through, who are they talking about? I mean, it's the king of Hungary, but who's he afraid of? The Mongols. So then you need to be thinking as you read, what do I know about the Mongols? They take over a lot of territory. They're ruthless. You know, they ride on horseback and they shoot their arrows, and they're really good at adopting a lot of the innovations of the people they come across, but they don't come across or come up with a whole lot of stuff themselves. So again, these are all things that should just kind of flow through your mind immediately. As you see key vocab, as you see key people, time periods, just kind of run through your head even before you read the document. What do I know? So next you get this really long, kind of wordy question. Which of the following features of Europe in the period circa 1200 to 1450 most directly contributed to the fact that the King of Hungary did not receive the military assistance, I can't talk, that he requested in 1240 as mentioned in the third paragraph. And he does talk about how, you know, he had asked for help and nobody came and helped him. So there's all these different possibilities here. You got to think of this time period with the Mongols involved. I mean, which one makes the most sense? So how many of you chose A? The existence of numerous feudal states that were frequently in conflict with one another. Let me ask you this. During the 1200s in Europe, were there numerous feudal states? Yes, there were. Did they ever fight each other? Yes, they did. That's the whole point of feudalism. You know, you got that system where people are loyal to the king because, you know, he's given them grants of land and they're promising to fight for them. It's one of the reasons that Europe was kind of so chaotic and so fragmented for so many years. So you look at that and it's like, well, that could be decent. All right. You're not 100% sure, though. Then you go to the rest of them. The development of parliaments that could check royal authority. That doesn't sound too bad, but we're talking, you know, 1250. You've got some divisions in government at this time, but they're not widespread. And really, that doesn't really explain why, you know, he wouldn't get assistance. I mean, you know, you've got these invaders coming in, you know, why wouldn't they come and help? The growing political power of regional trade organizations such as the Hanseatic League. Does this say anything about trade? No. So that one you can get rid of. It doesn't make any sense, okay? They put some vocab in there. They threw that in there just to throw you off. Maybe you recognize the Hanseatic League, which you read about for like 2 seconds once. But that's not the right answer because it is not applicable to what they're talking about. Finally, the religious divisions of Europe into Protestants and Catholics as well, or as a result of the Reformation.
I picked that one, I remember.
Okay, that sounds good. The problem is we're in 1250.
I know.
Protestant Reformation didn't happen for another 300 years. Now, I know a lot of that stuff, as we're reviewing it, it's like, oh my God, I don't know. You'll get that, okay? We're going to review the time periods. Once you kind of recognize what's going on and who's around in each time period, that's going to be the easiest way to eliminate stuff because they're going to put things in there that sound right. It could be right, but they just either hadn't happened yet or it was so long ago that it doesn't matter. The correct answer here is A. All right. Let me get out of this because I've got my timer on for some reason. All right, let's move on to the next one. So, okay, so this makes sense. C, you could eliminate right off the bat because it just has nothing to do with trade. D, if you know your periodization, you kind of know that this doesn't happen for a long time. I mean, if nothing else, you know, okay, Columbus sails the ocean blue, 1492. And you know the Reformation's about that time period, okay? It's hard to remember every single day because the Reformation's in the 1500s. But if you can have kind of those turning points in mind, you can eliminate some answer choices. Again, that's a tough question. It is. They like to start off and intimidate you right off the bat. That way you're like just mentally broken by the time you move on. All right, let's look at this next one. Bela the Fourth's statement in the 4th paragraph that the Hungarian people cannot cease to be amazed by the actions of the papacy. It's like, oh my God, papacy? Most directly refers to the papacy's failure to aid the Hungarians while. So what they're saying is the papacy, aka the Catholic Church, they're involved in something during this time period that's a big deal. Something that may have prevented them from sending a whole lot of help during the 1200s. So part of this is periodization, but let's just look at it. Did anybody put sending missionaries to China? Were Europeans rolling over to China a whole lot in 1250? No, because again, you got to think. I go back to 1492. You know, that's the time period where you really see the age of exploration. It takes a little bit longer for the Portuguese to get around Africa. It's not until the early 1500s that Europeans are actually directly going to China. So that one you can eliminate because it's not right for the time period. Supporting Christian conquest in the Iberian Peninsula, that's not bad. That was going on, but it had also been going on for years and years at that point. Initiating European military campaigns in the Middle East. Were there Christian Europeans in the Middle East during the 1200s?
Yes.
What was that called? The Crusades, okay? And again, part of it is, and I always say, guys, don't worry so much about firm dates, but you got to know broad time periods, more or less when certain things happen. That's something we're going to be reviewing. And once you can kind of get down that skill, I'm telling you, a lot of this is going to be easier. Initiating, we already did that. Encouraging maritime exploration in the Indian Ocean. Were the Europeans doing that in 1250? No. So even if you weren't sure about the Iberian Peninsula one, okay, and even if you didn't remember the Crusades, just based on the time period, you know that they're not sending missionaries to China. You also should know that they're not even in the Indian Ocean yet. They won't be there for another almost 300 years. So you narrow it down, the best answer is the Crusades. I mean, that's going to be, you know, the big military operation that the Catholic Church would have been involved in. Again, if you're like, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever, it's all good. Again, once you kind of see all the different ways the College Board's trying to trick you, they are trying to trick you. There's a reason they put answer choices there that right off the bat, they're all going to look correct. But there's something that if you really think about it, like really quickly, because you only got a minute, but if you really think about it, you can use, you know, kind of what you know to eliminate answer choices. And even if you get it down to like 2 answer choices, I mean, it's 50-50. And sometimes, hey, that's going to be about as good as it gets. Let's move on to number 3. All of the following statements are factually accurate. Okay, they do this a lot. Hey, all this stuff's true. But which would best explain Bella IV's reasoning for inviting the Cumans into Hungary, as mentioned in the 3rd paragraph? So you're probably like, who in the heck are the Cumans? I don't even remember the Cumans. We never talked about the Cumans. It's okay. They do this all the time. They'll throw sometimes some unfamiliar stuff in their documents, but usually they'll put like a little asterisk and it explains who they are. So they are a people who dwelled along the steppes of the Black Sea in Central Asia. And then if you look to where he's talking about, he says, we for shame resorted to inviting Cumans into our kingdom. Well, what does this have to do with anything? The Mongols are invading. This king, he's asking other kings in the church for help. Nobody's helping, so they bring in these crazy pagan Cumans. And you got to think that's got to help them in some way against the Mongols, right? I mean, why else would they do it? So when you're thinking along those lines, you get to number 3. All of them are accurate, which would best explain Bella IV's reasoning. So why would he get the Cumans in? How might that in some way benefit him in his country of Hungary? Cumans had settled in Hungary and had been granted local autonomy. Okay, that's cool. They're settled there. They can kind of do their own thing, but it's still a Christian nation. We know that, you know, Europe is predominantly Christian. How is that going to help him? I mean, that's not going to help him at all. So that one you can kind of get rid of. Cuman slave soldiers had become the rulers of the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt. Now that sounds pretty good, but they already told you they live in Hungary. They're not in Egypt. Plus, the Mamluks were the people that ruled Mamluk Egypt. So again, that one's kind of hard because the group we didn't talk a whole lot about, but again, you can kind of rationalize the whole thing away. Cumans were ethnic Turks who spoke language intelligible to the Mongols. Were the Mongols known for, you know, hardcore negotiations and peace treaties? I mean, you could reason with them, but their form of reasoning with them is, okay, give up and give us everything you have, and maybe we won't kill them. Okay, that's not going to really make sense. But if you look at the last one, The Cumans were nomadic warriors and were familiar with the Mongols' military tactics. They're from Central Asia. That makes sense. These guys are pagans and we're Christians. We don't like them, but they are warriors and they know about the Mongols. So let's let them in. Again, this is just about motivation. And when you really look at it, it's the only one that really makes sense. Again, it's not so much that these are super difficult. I mean, they are, but it's the timing. It's having to go through this in such a short time period that screws people up. But again, you can almost always eliminate a couple answer choices. Let's move on to the next one. We got some maps here. The first one is a navigational map produced by Albino de Canipa, a Genoese map maker, 1489. And you always want to read, all the stuff that's italicized, all the titles, okay? Sometimes that's more important. Like here, that is more important than the maps themselves. The map shows a number of cities and places, including Genoa, Venice, Paris, and the Muslim Emirate of Granada, Algiers, Cairo, Jerusalem, pretty much the Mediterranean region, okay? That's 1489, okay? Just a few years later, early 1490s, you get a world map that obviously does not look like the whole world, but it's better than this. This is just the Mediterranean. But a world map produced by Henricus Martellus, a German cartographer working in Florence, Italy, early 1490s. Which of the following historical developments most strongly contributed to the mapmaker's depiction of West Africa in the southern half of the world in map 2? So this is 1489. You barely see Africa. You just see the north part. This is the early 1490s. You see not all of Africa. It's not exactly accurate, but the western part kind of is. So what changed? What do you guys think it is? A, B, C, or D? Who said A? Just raise your hand.
Can you read them?
Okay, I guess that is kind of tiny. Okay, Portugal's development of maritime technology and navigational skills. It's okay. That's actually the right answer. So let's look at this. I kind of gave it away. Think about it. This is the 1490s. Who's out there exploring? The Spanish and the Portuguese. That's it at that point. Okay? The Portuguese are focused on getting around Africa. Okay, now it'll be a few years before they make the trip all the way around, but they had more contact with Africa than any other European nation. They are the ones that years later start the transatlantic slave trade. So that's one, even if you didn't 100% know that, that one should sound at least plausible. China's naval expeditions into the Indian Ocean basin. Anybody see why that can't be the answer? Okay, first of all, who made this map? Not it's Germans, okay? So you got Germans. By this point, the Chinese had kind of stopped all their big exploratory efforts. And even if they hadn't, how is that stuff really going to get to Europe at this time? Okay, and it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Again, this is all European, and you got to think about the time period. It's not that there's no communication between Europe and East Asia, but it would be relatively limited. Not enough for, so much to change in just a couple years. The limited geographical knowledge of Western European map makers as a result of the region's commercial isolation. Now, that doesn't sound bad, but again, you got to look at the time period. This is the 1490s. At this point, Europe was linked back in. This is after the Crusades. It's, at the height of the Renaissance. They started trading and traveling again. So they are not completely isolated. Remember, during this time period, the whole reason they start exploring is because the Ottomans took Constantinople 50 years earlier, and they're jacking up the prices. That in and of itself tells you they're not isolated. They do have some contacts. The decline of Mediterranean powers such as Genoa and Venice, and the rise of Atlantic powers such as England, France, and the Netherlands. Look at this time period. This is the 1490s. When do England, France, and the Netherlands start becoming more of a big deal?
Later than that.
Yeah. How'd they get all their money?
The slave trade.
Okay, and that was going on where? Yeah, but where else? Where were enslaved people going to?
America.
They were going to the Americas. Guys, if this is 1490, nobody's got colonies in the Americas yet. So again, you always got to question the time period. I know you're like, oh my God, how am I going to do that in a minute? It'll get faster. It will. We're going to spend some time really reviewing when certain things happened. And again, just kind of being able to associate, different events with different time periods. That's probably the easiest way to kind of eliminate some answer choices. Let's look at this next one, number 5. A historian would likely use map 1 to research which of the following developments in the period 1450 to 1750. So map number 1, and it's kind of faded, especially on here, but you can see the Mediterranean mainly. You got North Africa, you got Europe, a little bit of the Middle East is represented, and obviously some major cities. So, oh wait, that's map 2. Sorry. Future revisions. So this is the world map, okay? That's what they thought the whole world was, right? Obviously, it's not. So which of these answer choices would, have the biggest impact on this being revised? So let's look at it. Western Europeans' discovery of geographical scholarship from the Mongol Khanates.
No.
Why?
But they already knew the Mongols.
Well, they already knew it, but look at what they're saying. Geographical scholarship. Were the Mongols building a bunch of universities and breaking down, geography and making all sorts of... No!
Right
The
there.
Mongols created this really big empire, but as far as like innovations, as far as like, an academic legacy, there's none of that. That's not what you associate with the Mongols. It's not like we learned a heck of a lot. I mean, they probably aided like gunpowder and stuff going to the West, but it's not like they learned about map making. The experience of European merchants transporting Asian goods in the Indian Ocean. Now, that's not bad. Okay, that's not bad. That would certainly help this map become a little bit more clear. But there's one that would definitely make bigger revisions to the map because you at least see more or less what all's there. You got the Indian Ocean, you got Africa, you can kind of see India, you can see some little weird tail that I guess is supposed to be China and Southeast Asia. That's not a bad answer choice, but there is a better one. It's this one, Spanish sponsorship of transatlantic maritime exploration. How would that change the map?
It would add North America.
It would add a whole new world. So that's going to have the bigger ramifications. The Indian Ocean one's good, but yeah, the Spanish sponsorship is better. Finally, Qing China's resumption of maritime expeditions to expand its tribute system. Qing dynasty, they're the final Chinese dynasty. Are they out there exploring? No, remember, they're the ones that really become super isolated. They're the ones that the Europeans come in later on and boss them around. Again, part of it's periodization, but still, there's a couple of these you can eliminate. All right, last set, and then we'll wrap this up. And this one, it's intimidating, but there's some clear things here that I think could help you. So even before you read, you need to look at the source, okay? This is going to be terrible. Sai Mustafa Çelebi, Ottoman court official. It's the biography of the famous Ottoman architect, Mimar Sinan. When you say Ottomans, what's the main thing you remember about them? Okay, they take over Constantinople, yes.
Christian.
Say it again.
Ah. They take it from Christianity and they convert it to
Yes. Okay, those are probably two of the biggest things.
that's the
They're Muslims. That is a big deal. Okay, that's something that should pop into your mind when you see their name. You should be thinking about that. But also, yeah, they're the ones that kind of did away with the Byzantine. They took Constantinople. That was their big claim to fame. That's what really allowed them to become an empire. So thinking about it along those lines, everything else gets a little bit more clear. Now you read about this and he's talking about how this guy built this mosque and it was even better than the Hagia Sophia, which was like the largest church in the world for years and years. Which of the following characteristics of the Ottoman Empire best explains why Sinan was determined to match the dimensions of the Hagia Sophia Church as discussed in the third paragraph? A, the Ottoman dynasty was descended from Turkic pastoralist nomads who did not have their own tradition of monumental architecture. Now that's true. But so, You know, who cares? I mean, that's years and years earlier. This is the 1600s. The Ottomans took Constantinople 250 years before that. They even talk about the fact that they had built a bunch of mosques before this one. So while that is true once upon a time, it's not really relevant. Ottoman art often illustrated the historical and spiritual connections between Islam and other monotheistic religions such as Christianity and Judaism. What do you guys remember about Islamic art? Anything peculiar about it?
They never show the face of the person.
Yeah. They never show faces. They don't even show people usually. So how are you going to be able to relate the relationship between Islam and Christianity and Judaism with like geometric designs? That doesn't make sense. And especially these days, you know, they're all competing with each other. So that doesn't make sense. By the time the Ottoman Empire began to expand, the Byzantine Empire had already been dramatically reduced in size and geopolitical importance. That's not bad. Okay, that's
Weren't they gone though? Like, weren't they not a thing anymore?
pretty much. I mean, you got to think what allowed the Ottomans to truly become an empire is defeating them. And by the time the Ottomans really get on the scene, yeah, you're right. They're pretty much over. All they've got is Constantinople. But it's this famous Christian city. That's kind of like a big get for Mehmed the Conqueror. This one makes more sense, though. Bringing Constantinople with its imperial traditions under Islamic rule was one of the central pillars of the Ottoman rulers' claims to political legitimacy. I mean, Ropa even said one of the first things that came to your mind, oh, Constantinople. Again, that's what I mean. When you look at where this is coming from, a lot of those first things that are coming to your mind, because that's the stuff that we really emphasized. And we didn't emphasize stuff for no reason. It's because that's what the College Board wants you to know. The last two are pretty good. The first two, just when you really think about it, don't make a lot of sense. Based on the intended purpose of Sinan's biography, it is most likely that the information in the passage might be. So, man, this guy's getting a biography written about him, okay? Sinan, this Ottoman architect. So this guy, who's also an Ottoman, he's writing about him. He's an Ottoman court official, probably trying to make him look pretty cool. Overstating the extent of the architectural challenges Sinan faced in building the mosque, that's going to make him look cool. Understating the extent of Ottoman royal support for the building of the mosque, guys, in the document he says, with the help of God and the support of His Majesty the Sultan. So this, you just got to look back at the document and verify it. And I'm moving kind of quick because we're almost out of time. Overstating Christian architects' achievements and their contributions to the building of the mosque. Why would he want to make the Christians look good? That doesn't make sense. It's his biography, you know? He wants to be made look good. Intentionally attributing the building of the mosque to Sinan, even though he was not an architect. Ottoman architect, Mimar Sinan. Sometimes it's that easy. And the last one. Sinan's service to the Ottoman state best illustrates the fact that land-based empires in the period 1450 to 1750 often relied on. Now, this one's pretty tough because all these at first look, you know, pretty good. This first one's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo, appointed bureaucrats to break the power of entrenched landed aristocracies. They purposely made that sound real highfalutin just to get you to pick it. It ain't right. Mass conscription of soldiers to carry out their territorial expansion. That's true, but they don't talk about soldiers at all here. Okay, sometimes you just got to look at what the document says. Members of the clergy to perform religious services, administer religious laws, and oversee public order. Well, they're talking about a mosque here, but that's not really addressed. Plus, you think the clergy, you think the Catholic Church, these are Muslims. This is your answer. Methods of recruitment of officials that made use of the ethnic and religious diversity of their subjects. Guys, this is something that we talked about, the Dev Shirmeh. It says here in the little asterisks, Sinan himself was born into an Ottoman Greek Christian family, but was converted to Islam when he began training for government service as a young boy. And we had said that's one of the big things to remember about the Ottomans, how they kind of used the Christian population in their empire. They would basically kidnap them and brainwash them and convert them and make them absolutely loyal to the emperor, to the sultan. So that's one you kind of need to just know the concept, but also, I mean, it's the one that makes the most sense. I mean, 1 and 2, A and B, they just don't make any mention of whatsoever. And again, if you end up with 2 answer choices, I mean, you could certainly find yourself in worse shape. So this is pretty brief. We're going to go back over strategies. We're going to do some practice. We're going to go over, different multiple choice stuff we do in class as well as, other tutorials. But again, the big thing is read it carefully, look at that source first, think about what you already know. And the biggest way to eliminate answer choices, yeah, this might be true, but is it true of this time period? Is it true of this civilization? Those are some of the more effective ways to go about it. Here's what I'm going to do. Tomorrow in class, remind me. I will tell you how you did on the quiz. Because I want to get out of here just like you guys. Well, you don't have to remind me, but yeah, I can tell you how you did on the quiz. That's not a big deal. Tomorrow in class, like I said, we're continuing to work on our project, so I'll have time to talk to you about it. And again, if need be, you can come up, we can look at the questions and maybe try to figure out where you went wrong if you did. Next week, we're going to talk about SAQs. Kind of the same deal. I'll have a couple samples, probably kind of break out some from a past AP exam. On the AP exam, it's 4 sets of SAQ questions. Like we do 1 set when we do an SAQ. It's 4 sets, but between the last 2, you choose one or the other. So ultimately, it's 3 sets of questions you do actually on the test. So we'll do a deal where you can kind of choose which one you want. Then we'll look at some samples. We'll look at some different ways that you could go about it. Again, it's overwhelming at first, okay? But that's why we're going to spend about 3 weeks reviewing for this thing before it gets started. Plus, guys, you got to understand, most of this stuff, all this stuff, we haven't talked about in 3, 4, 5 months, okay? I don't expect you to remember every single little detail like the Dev Share May. But after we go over it, I think it's going to be a lot easier. Thank you guys for coming. We are done. And yeah, we'll talk to you more tomorrow. Kiddos online, thank you.